The one thing that I would like for people to take from podcasts is the idea that they can do it.
Welcome to El Cafecito Travel Talks with Tony Lloyd. Each episode, Tony sits down with travelers, expats, creatives, and community voices from across Latin America and beyond, sharing stories of travel, culture, connection, and the journeys that shape us. So grab a cafecito or a tea and enjoy the conversation.
Hey, this is Tony Lloyd. Welcome back. It's been a while since you've heard my voice. I finally, after a few years, maybe like 4 years now, decided to relaunch this podcast. But today, for the relaunch, what I've decided to do is actually have somebody interview me.
Yeah, hi, my name is Skye Jewel. I'm here with Tony. Yeah, I'm gonna interview Tony a little bit so we can get to know him better and First of all, for listeners who may be new to the podcast, who is Tony Lloyd?
Okay, I guess the first thing that comes to my mind is that I'm a TCK. For those people who don't know what a TCK is, I did do a few other podcasts on that. A TCK, which basically means that I've grown up in different environments and different cultures. However, I've now spent more than 50% of my life here in Latin America. In my professional life, I've been a hostel owner for more than 20 years. I've run hostels Quito, Cuenca, and Bogota. But I've also worked at least for the last 10 years, I've worked as a travel planner, travel advisor, whatever the catchword is at this moment, but helping people plan their journeys in Central and South America is my focus area. And in the last few years, I've refocused. Now I'm working a lot stronger as an activist for the Afro-Latin communities for Central and South America, creating visibilities for these communities in a lot of different ways.
Nice. Yeah, it's good to hear more about your background. So the podcast was quiet for a while. What happened and what have you been doing during that time?
Okay, so basically the podcast was a project that I wanted to do before the pandemic happened. And what had happened in that situation, we actually started by doing written stories on our Facebook page. And for some reason, I can't even find them anymore because Facebook has changed things and they sort of disappeared. But the idea was that after so many years of working in the hostel industry, I'm always meeting people from all different places. And if you've ever been in a hostel, anyone who's listening out there, they know that the most typical thing is we sit around, exchange stories, and you meet people every day that are coming with different stories. And I thought, okay, I would love for those stories to be heard, either written or verbally in something like a podcast, just so that the people who are trying to decide, is this for me? Should I travel? Should I leave where I'm living to go and explore, so they could hear firsthand from people who are actually doing it and not secondhand stories. So that was the initial idea of why I started the podcast. And then the pandemic came. The laws here in Ecuador prevented me from opening the hostel for a year and a half. So I started focusing on some of those projects, and I had a lot of time to be able to sit down and edit and work on it. The pandemic ended. It was a lot to do the editing. So I love doing the podcast. I love talking to people. Anyone who knows me knows that my favorite hobby is talking. I even get criticized sometimes for talking too much. When it's all done, you have to sit down and edit it. And that was something I definitely don't like. And so I just found myself with less and less time to be able to sit down and edit.
What have you been doing during that time?
So during that time, I've been, again, relaunching the hostel. Unfortunately for Ecuador, we've had a lot of bad press in the last 3 years. And so tourism has really dropped. So it just required just doing a lot more of that. The next part of what's happened is that during the pandemic, I was involved in a conference call with a group of activists for the Afro communities throughout Central and South America. And one of them said to me, well, Tony, you speak 4 languages. What could we do to get some more help? And when I answered that question, I said, well, the problem is that people don't know you exist. So as soon as I answered that question, I said to myself, no, has to change. I have to look at how I'm helping the community in a whole different way. What I've been doing, especially in the last 3 years, I've been refocusing and spending a lot of time looking at how to help create visibility for the communities while doing my other work. So both things will continue on a parallel.
Yeah, so you were talking about managing a hostel and how that invites just stories and perspectives from people all over the world. So you've met people from all over the world through travel and hosting and through your community work. What's something that continues to surprise you about people?
I think the main thing that always comes up is how people are looking to be seen. We're looking to be heard. We're looking to somebody to say, I see you, to feel a sense of belonging, to feel a sense of community. No matter where we are in the world, that to me is the common thread that I see for most people. Sometimes the community could be a long-term community type feeling, or sometimes, again, it's just being in a hostel for 2 or 3 days and you feel you're a part of something. You feel that you're a part of this group. People show up, they come in the door with these wide eyes, and then within a couple of hours when they meet the other travelers and they say, okay, see, yeah, we have this bond, it gives them a feeling of, okay, I belong somewhere. So I think that to me is the most common thing. A lot of times when people are traveling, that's also part of what they're looking for. They're looking for a place to fit in.
So you yourself, you said that you've lived in Latin America for half your life, more than 25 years. What keeps you here?
One of the things I love about Latin America, especially when I go into like the rural communities, I love the connection of community. Like I could think of places that I go to where people are very poor. They live in houses that are made out of bamboo or sometimes even cardboard with dirt floors, but they will share everything they have with you. They'll kill the one chicken they have and they're willing to share that with you. And I find that people here, even in the poorest communities, are always welcoming and always willing to receive you in that way. I'm not saying that people in North America are not like that, but at the same time, when I've been in places in Europe and places in North America, sometimes you show up, they're just like, hello, and that's it. There's not much more to it. Or people don't have time to share with you. Here in Latin America, it's not always perfect. We don't live in this perfect world, but people will take the time. They'll take the time to show you something. They'll take the time to show you something about themselves. And to me, that's something that I've adapted, and I feel that that's part of who I am now. And I wouldn't see myself changing that for the rest of my life.
So you help people travel throughout Central and South America. What would you say is the biggest mistake travelers make when they're planning a trip?
I think nowadays especially, there's so many different options, and people will look at YouTube, they'll look at Instagram, TikTok, and they'll see these different things, and they create these lists for themselves. They're like, okay, I want to do this, and they start adding all these different things that they want to do. Sometimes they don't put into, most times they don't put into consideration the distances from those places. So I get people who will tell me, okay, I want to come to Ecuador because Ecuador looks like a small little country, and I want to spend 10 days in Ecuador, and their list of 10 things that they want to do. They're not thinking, okay, it's going to take 8 hours for the bus to get from point A to point B. Or if you're going to fly, you have to get to the airport. Where is the airport? And things like that. So what ends up happening a lot of times is they spend a lot of time just in bus station, airports, and different places like that. They're really not sometimes being able to connect with where they are. And so a lot of time is spent that way, just not really understanding the culture and how that works. Also with things like, okay, people think, okay, one of the most common questions that get asked to me by my hostel guests right now is like, oh, or they'll say to me, oh, I saw that on the internet. And I'm like, okay, you saw that in the internet, but that doesn't work this way here. Or why can't I book this bus on the internet? No, we cannot book buses on the internet because Ecuador is still a country where people talk to each other. You're going to get your information, go into the bus station and talk into the person. It doesn't matter what it says on the internet. Technology, I think, is really great, and there's a lot of wonderful things that you could do with technology. But when you come to Latin America, you have to understand that you have to have that personal touch with people. And I think that's one of the things I try to encourage when I work on any sort of plan for people, is to let them know that I'm picking up the phone, I'm calling somebody. I'm not going to Google where such and such a place is, because there's so often it's wrong. And so that, I think, is the biggest mistake that people make, is that they're thinking, I could get my information off the internet and I don't need to talk to anyone. And I know that in North America and Europe right now, there's so many efficiency ways of doing things. People keep telling me that they buy their avocado online and they have it delivered to their house. I'm like, I cannot imagine buying a fruit online. So this is just the way my life is in Ecuador, in Latin America.
Can you share one travel experience that changed the way that you see the world?
One that I can remember very clearly. A few years ago, I went to Panama with a group of friends, quite a few years now. So we went to the northern part of Panama that's called Bocas del Toros. We had all the information about going to Boca de Toros. We had all the information that we rented a house, and there was going to be a lady in the house with her grandson that were the caretakers. The woman was going to cook for us. The grandson was going to help us with our day-to-day things. With 5 other friends, there were 6 of us all together, and I was the only Afro. These are some of my best friends and still are my best friends. And if they're listening right now, hello, shout out, you know who you are. I had an incredible holiday, and it was just spectacular. However, one of the things that was quite interesting is that I was sitting there at this table with my friends, and we were eating, and I could hear in the kitchen the grandmother talking to the grandson. And I heard her say something to him. I'm like, hold it a second. They're speaking in Patois. And I got up and I stuck my head into the kitchen and I said, Wagwan. And she was so surprised that here comes this person this tourist, this traveler that stayed here, and he could actually understand my language. He could actually speak with me in this language. And my friends, they say, how do you know this? And I said, because of the fact that I'm Jamaican, part of my nationality. What was the lesson I learned from it? It was the whole point of how the different worlds could come together. So here I was with one group of people who I love dearly. Here I was making a connection to another part of who I am as a TCK, connecting the different parts like that. It was a moment to say, you never know when and where you're going to make this connection and how you're going to connect with somebody. And she was like, wow, for her, it was an incredible experience to have somebody come to the house that could understand her. For me, it was an incredible experience. So to make that connection, that's something that I've used from that day onwards to continue to do the work that I'm doing. So to do the regular hostel work that I'm doing, plus also the Afro activist work that I'm doing, because it's that connection, making those connections.
Yeah, and we were just in that group conversation about the Jamaican diaspora all across Latin America. So that's
a whole other interesting dynamic too, is that in all of Central America and Ecuador also, there was more than 4,000 Jamaicans that came to help build the railroad. And one of the things that's also quite interesting, and maybe this might be taking us a little bit off topic, is cell memory. And I thought that when I came to Ecuador, I thought I was the first one in my family to have ever come to Ecuador. But one of my older uncles said to me, Tony, I want to come and visit you in Ecuador because our grandmother, my mother's grandmother, used to always talk about her time in Ecuador. And I was like, what? And so based on the time period that he said she was here, and I looked back at the information, the historical information about Ecuador, she would have been here in the same time that the railroad was being built. Unfortunately, because the government contracted the men to build the railroad, their names are registered in the different registers because they were the contracted workers. But there was approximately 10%, so 4,000, there was approximately another 400 women that came along with them that help them to cook, to clean, and just to be support with them while they're here in Ecuador. So those people don't really, it's very hard to find their names on any sort of register. But it was really interesting to see that here I was thinking that I'm doing something new that no one else has ever done in my family, to find out that, yes, I'm reactivating a cell memory. And maybe one day I'll do a podcast on cell memory, but that's it for now.
So you've spent years connecting with people and communities across the Americas. Why do you do that work, and why is it important to you?
Definitely, it's what I just said a few minutes ago about the fact that even in my personal life, I know for a fact that we have these connections. And when I go to these different countries in Central and South America, I see how we're connected. I see how we have more connections than people, that even myself, every day I'm learning all these different new connections that we have. I see how we're a lot more similar than we think we are. You know, all of the countries from Canada all the way to Argentina is basically the same history.
Of all the projects you're involved in, why was it important to bring back El Cafecito Travel Talks?
I thought it was important to bring it back for the same reason I started it in the first place. I think it's important for people to hear firsthand the stories that the travelers and the different people. I think that I am so fortunate to be in a position where on a daily basis I'm meeting people from all over the world that have different stories to tell. I thought, okay, this is what I would want to put out to the world. I've listened to so many other podcasts. I listen to a lot of travel podcasts, obviously trying to look at the styles, look at how they do it. And there's a few that come close, and I won't go through the names right now. Actually, one of them I actually interviewed on my podcast before, so you could take a look and see who that is. But at the same time, I felt like my angle is a little bit different, and I think it needs to go out. The other part of it too is that, as I said, working with the Afro communities, I wanted some more of their stories to be told. I want to help create that visibility. But at the same time, I purposely chose not to do just an Afro podcast because I think it's about all the stories being told. I think I don't want it to become a situation where the stories are being told and they're not included. I want inclusion. I want us all to come together and all of us have an opportunity to tell our stories. And I think that's how we're going to create a better community and a better world. Basically being able to listen to each other and hear our stories. And then we're going to see that we're really not that much different. We're looking for the same things.
In the podcast, you're wanting to expand on Afro stories in relation to travel. What other kinds of stories and guests can listeners expect to hear about in the new chapter of this podcast?
In the last few years, there's actually been a big movement of expats that are coming to Cuenca. So at this current moment, there's like 10,000 US people that are living here in Cuenca that have come to retire or come to live here. At first, I didn't really consider them travelers. But what I'm looking at now, the podcast, it is called Travel Stories. Sorry, it is called Travel Talks. I'm looking at anyone who's deciding to leave their nest, leave what their usual routine is, to go somewhere else, to go to a different destination and do something else, or live in a different place, or travel through a different place. You could be there for one day or for the rest of your life. It's just the idea that you are going on this new adventure. And that's what I'm going to be talking about, the different adventures. I also plan to maybe interview some of the people locally that will ask them what are their opinions on travelers and how do they see that affecting their life. It will still be about travel. It could be travel for one day, or it could be travel for the rest of your life. And then it could be how people see you as a traveler and different things like that. So that's what I expect to do in the next episodes. And just a different way that people do this and do this transition into their lives. The majority of the stories will obviously be people here in Cuenca because I'm here in Cuenca physically, but I'm definitely looking to connect with people in different parts of the country, different parts of the world, listening to their stories also. Like one of the stories that I still love so much is a blind solo traveler who's been to 125 countries. At the time that I did the podcast, I definitely have to catch up with him again. I would love to do like a follow-up. Traveling 125 countries, completely blind, partially deaf, an incredible story. So if you have not already listened to some of my old ones, definitely go back, and that's one of the ones I encourage you to listen to. And I will definitely try to meet up with some of the people that I've done before their interviews and sort of say, hey, where are you now and what are you up to?
Nice. So if you could invite listeners to take away one thing from your years of travel and living abroad, what would it be?
The one thing that I would like for people to take from this podcast is the idea that they can do it. I always say that I'm not a preacher. I don't want to be out there telling people, oh, you should travel, you should pack up your bags and move across the world and do this and do this. No, those people, they'll make their decision if they want to make. But I also know that there's a large group of people that say, I would like to do it, but I'm afraid. There's a fear about it. And those are the people I like to speak with, and let them know that it's okay. Let them know that there are people, guardian angels, that could help them along the way in the process. Let them hear other people's stories and how they did it. They could choose after that how they want to do it. But what I want you to do is to say, go on the adventure. Go on the adventure. If this is what is in your mind, it's there for a reason. And come and take the journey.
Nice.
Thank you. Definitely, I want to invite everyone to come and listen to the podcast that I did with you. I already recorded it. Everything is already set. So as soon as the intro episode goes up, within a few days, and from there, every Tuesday, I'll start to put the other stories. So thanks everyone for coming back, and thanks to all the new listeners.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of El Cafecito Travel Talks with Tony Lloyd. If you'd like to learn more about today's guest, check the podcast notes for links and information related to this episode. And if you have questions, stories, or topics you'd love us to explore in future episodes, feel free to reach out. Tony also helps independent travelers plan meaningful journeys throughout Central and South America, including cultural and community-based experiences. And if you'd like to support the podcast and help keep these conversations going, you'll find a contribution link in the podcast notes. Until next time, thank you for sharing a cafecito or tea with us, and safe travels wherever your journey may take you.